This is lesson 47 in Algebra 1, and it is on percents less than 100 and percents greater than 100. And the book gives a lot of theory, and they do things differently than what I like to do. So we will just kind of do things the way I do them rather than the way they do them. And let's just start with example 47. If you remember, the word of always represents multiply, and the word is represents equal. So when we look at 47, it says 20% of times what number, we'll call that x, is, we'll call that an equal, 15. Okay, now they have you doing diagrams and all that. So when you get to the lesson and it says something like work each problem and then draw a diagram for each problem, ignore the drawing a diagram, just solve the thing. Okay, so one of the things that's very, very important is this right here, this percent. Percent is a great way to give an answer, but you cannot use a percent in an actual equation. I can't do anything with that. You always have to get rid of the percent sign, move the decimal place over 2, and call it 0.20. Then you can actually solve it. But if it's still in the percent, you can't solve it. So I have 0.20, x equals 15, divide by 0.20, divide by 0.20, those go away, and I have x equals 15 divided by 20. And that gives me 75. So let's look and see what we have. 20% of 75 is 15. That's what this says. Alright, let's look at the next example. That's example 47.2. Get rid of all this stuff. It says what percent of, alright, so we're going to use what percent. I'll just put a percent sign there so we know what we're doing. What percent of 140 is 98. So this is our x. So we have 140 times x equals 98. Divide by 140, divide by 140, those cancel. 98 divided by 140 is, I'm looking at my calculator here, 0.7. Okay, that's your answer. But the question said what percent. So now once we get our answer, they want our real answer, which would be in a percent form. So we move our decimal place over 2, and we have a percent then. We have 70%. Alright, let's jump up to 47.3, the top of the next page, and look at that example. 15% of 300 is what number? So again, we can't do anything because that's in the percent, so we move the decimal over 2, and we multiply 15, or 0.15 times 300, and that gives me 45. So that equals x. So what I found out was 15% of 300 is 45. So if you're at some fancy restaurant and you pay $300 for a meal, oh my goodness, I can't imagine that, and you want to leave a 15% tip, 300 times 15% is, you're going to leave a $45 tip. Alright, no food is worth $300. Okay, anyway, let's see here. We are looking at, we're going to continue on with this video, see if we can do it all in one video. And we'll look at the next example, and the next example has to do with percentages greater than 100, which I don't understand. I mean, how can you have more than a whole piece of pie, than 100% of the pie? But anyway, it says what number is 160% of 60? So we're going to change that to a decimal, and we move the decimal over to 1, 2 times 60. Now take my handy dandy calculator, take 1.6 times 60, and I get 96 for my answer. So 96 is 160% of 60. So 100% of 60 is 60. So anything over 100% is going to give me a number bigger than 60. In this case, it's 96. Alright, let's do a couple more examples here. 47.5. And we have if 75, ooh, we went to story problems. If 75 is increased by 150%, what is the result? Alright, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. 75. If I have 75 out of 75, that means I have 100%, right? Alright, so 75 is increased. So, whoops, I don't know why I put 17. 75 is increased by 150%. Well, 100% is 75. So 100% is 75, and we're increasing 150%. So this is where it gets weird. So it would be 100% is our 75, and we're increasing another 150. So we are actually increasing 250% because 100% got us to our 75, and we increased another 150. So actually this could say 250% of 75 is what number? And then we put our decimal in the right place, 2.5, get rid of that, and we just take 2.5 times 75. Okay, so let's do one more, and we'll be done. And these are a little tricky. It's just whenever you're increasing above the number that you started with, you're going to have to add 100%, because 100% gets you to the number you started with. And when you go higher than that, you're going to have to add to that 100%. That's why I have 250%. Okay, so let's look at 47.6. Alright. It says, what percentage of 90 is 306? That doesn't look too bad. Divide by 90, divide by 90. So x equals 306 divided by 90. And 306 divided by 90. Sorry, you have to listen to me talk to myself. X equals 3.4. Okay, so you would think that would be my answer, but what does the question say? What percent? So we have to change this to a percent by moving the decimal from here over 2 places, 1, 2. So 340% is my answer there. Okay, so that's it for lesson number 47. Now pretty much everything is going to be the same, is what I just did. So probably the one that's going to be the tricky one is the practice problem D, where it says if 20 is increased by 90%. So we're at 20 and we're increasing it by 90%. So it took 100% to get to 20, and then we're going to go another 90%. So it's actually 190% of 20 is what number? And then you're changing this to a decimal by moving the decimal to times 20 equals x. So multiply those together, you get your answer, and you're good to go. But other than that, I think you'll be fine.